Here we are. After 2 weeks of looking at some of the most iconic video game characters on the planet, it's finally time to put all the pieces together and to talk about the main story. This video is going to try to accomplish a few things. Firstly, we're going to be taking a look at the overall story of GTA 5, talking about how the three characters clash to create a wonderful story, and how things could have been a little bit different with just a little bit of effort. Now, I do want to say that I'm going to be retracing a lot of the things that I said in previous videos, especially if you've watched the 3 parts that came before this looking into the other characters, so please do expect this video to be more of a summary more than an in-depth analysis. Since this video is going to be talking about a lot more content, I expect it to be a little bit longer than you guys might be used to. I'm hoping that it's going to be between 12 and 18 minutes, so bear with me. We're also going to be talking about the online mode. While it may be brief, I do think that it's important to talk about it if we're going to look at the overall impact that GTA 5 has brought to the video game industry. Now get ready to strap in and prepare for my impromptu review of GTA 5. And its online mode. Firstly, a huge shout out to ItsGheb for being a major source of inspiration for this video. I saw his Let's Talk About GTA 5 video and I really liked it, so I decided to come up with something similar and wanted to reach out to him to see if he'd like to collab on it with me. After reaching out, it only took him 3 short days to come back to me with a really nice, well-edited 3-minute opinion piece. And I gotta say, Jeb, you work a lot quicker than I do, and I'm very grateful for that. You're going to be hearing from him later on in this video, but please make sure you go over to his page and subscribe. Make sure you let him know that Will sent you. With that being said, thank you, Jeb, and let's get straight into talking about the prologue of GTA 5. What is there to say that hasn't already been said about the GTA 5 prologue after 11 long years? Nothing. Alright, pack it up, boys. We're going home. In all seriousness, this may be one of the most discussed prologues in video game history just because of how much this did for the video game industry as a whole. This prologue showed a new side to what video games could bring to the table. So let's take a completely original approach that has never been done on YouTube ever before, and let's break it down piece by piece. Firstly, we see Michael, Trevor, and Brad robbing a bank, then moving on to what seems to be a misfire on the operation as the local police get called to the scene. Based on how the characters are acting, this is not how it was planned. After poor old local Yoko bought it, the crew barely escapes the police by marginally beating a train that separates the two sides of the rail. And I mean marginally. After this, we see Dave Norton shoot Brad and Michael while Trevor performs a last stand to kill as many police officers as possible. A woman gets taken hostage, and Trevor runs into the misty fog. From here, we see Michael get buried and his funeral underway. Then, we see Michael watching his own funeral happen. Trippy. From here, some could say that the prologue is over, but I'm also going to include the first mission you do as Franklin. We see Lamar and Franklin ask Michael post-therapy for some directions, and after some hesitation he gives in. Franklin and Lamar head over to some nice sports cars and steal them with the player given no explanation as to why. Lamar insults the player choice regardless, however mentioning genitalia is just cruel.
Bobby big dick on a nigga, huh?
The two drive recklessly through Los Santos until finally arriving at the dealership. From here we get to meet the shady businessman Simeon and even get to see the worthless sack of shit that is Jimmy DeSanta in the flesh. This is the conclusion of what I'm considering the prologue, and it's not hard to see why it is as famous as it is. It's well crafted and allows the players to play as all 3 of the main characters from the game. I remember when I was 11 years old and the amount of anticipation that I had in seeing the story of these 3 bank robbers, and then I guess Franklin is cool too. I did think that it would be cool to see a different perspective from that of Trevor and Michael since they both had worked together in the past. Plus this prologue showed off heists and there wasn't anything else like it at the time. Sure, Payday 2 was big and I loved that game as well, but all there was to do in Payday 2 were the heists. There was no reprieve that allowed the players to enjoy them. I know my point is basically that we had too much of a good thing all at once, and that sounds a bit ridiculous, but I really do think that it holds true. The heists you do in the campaign of GTA 5 are something truly special, minus that fucking submarine one. And I still go back and replay them from time to time. Now let's take a larger look at the entire story itself. The story of GTA 5 is convoluted and long, but there's a string of events that can get us to the point that I'm trying to use to make for this video. Michael meets Franklin, vandalizes a dealership, tears down a $2 million house, meets the owner of said house, gets $2.5 million in debt, robs a bank, gets discovered by Trevor, gets found out by the FIB, does some heists with Trevor, does some heists with the FIB, rob the Union Depository, and then murder the FIB. And pretty much everyone who had a slight disagreement with any of the 3 main characters during the course of the story. Like, come on guys, Stretch was not that important. Leave the ballers alone. Now, I'm fully aware that this was a gross oversimplification of the main story, and that's kind of the point. The point of this recap is to describe what GTA 5 is remembered as. Go and ask someone who played the campaign 11 long years ago, and I'm willing to bet that this description is pretty similar to what you get from them. These are the highlights of the game, and boy are they some really good highlights to have. But there are some minor flaws in the game's story and delivery. Seeing as I'm using this video to look more of the good rather than the bad, I don't think it makes sense for me to be the one to bring up these flaws. Instead, here's ItsGheb and some of the things that he wishes would have been done differently in the game's story.
Hey, thanks for getting me on the channel, Will. So yeah, Grand Theft Auto 5, what a game that was, right? I recently looked at this one on my channel, which overall was a pretty positive rundown. When it came to the presentation and gameplay, there was nothing but glowing remarks from me for the most part. Now, on the other hand, when it came to the story, I actually had a little bit of mixed thoughts, especially after playing some of the earlier entries in the series that I think stand out a bit more, such as San Andreas, 4, and the Ballad of Gay Tony. If I could broadly say what the main issue with Grand Theft Auto 5's story was, it would be that there are a number of things that either feel rushed or underdeveloped, which ultimately makes a large portion of the story feel like it's in a death by 1,000 cuts situation, bringing it down to something that is still overall good and entertaining, but not exactly amazing. So I have a few rapid fire examples for you guys of why I have this perspective. Franklin, outside of being the catalyst for Michael's return to the life of crime and being the decision maker of the outcome of the ending, doesn't really do that much plot-wise. This is why I think we see Franklin take the optional assassination missions, since he actually has the fewest story missions in the campaign overall. Michael and Franklin's student-mentor relationship seems to begin rather suddenly, and it isn't really clear how it developed from a situation where they're merely using each other for their own personal gain into a more loyal friendship. Franklin and Trevor's relationship is for the most part pretty one-note, and outside of a conflict with Trevor feeling guilty of having Michael left for dead, doesn't really develop too much over the course of the game. When Trevor forgives and saves Michael during the mission in the wrap-up, it comes off as a little sudden. Trevor has a few conversations with Franklin, Lamar, and Patricia before this happens, so it doesn't come completely out of nowhere, but I think if we got one more pivotal moment, maybe between Trevor and Michael's family, the redemption of Trevor would have hit a little bit harder. Speaking of Trevor, he is quite the big personality, doesn't he? So much so that it seems like he takes center stage in every cutscene that he's in, for better or for worse. I would have liked to see a bit more of the human and vulnerable side of Trevor like we do with his interactions with Patricia or his mom, so he could come off as a little bit more dynamic and a lot more likable. Both Stretch and the Triads are fine enough secondary villains for Franklin and Trevor to contend with in the early and mid game, but having them be the final targets that Franklin and Michael take out in the game is a bit of a letdown. Yeah, they're loose ends, but when you compare that to what Trevor has to do with killing Haynes and kidnapping Weston, it doesn't exactly seem like a pretty fair division of duties. I would have had them kill off Stretch and the Triads earlier on, and then have the three of them team up to take out Haynes and Weston as the finale. The game also has some pretty generous amounts of filler. I spoke earlier about Franklin getting the assassination missions, but we can also see some other examples such as Michael's missions with Solomon's movie studio, a couple of Trevor's heist missions, and the time that we spend with Michael and Trevor as they're hiding out in Sandy Shores after Trevor kidnaps Patricia. There's some fun character moments in here for sure, but for the most part, these could have been removed from the game or changed to side content, and the overall plot wouldn't have changed too much. These are not to say that Grand Theft Auto 5 story is devoid of value or anything. I think there are plenty of great themes to dive into and character tropes to analyze. Will here has actually made a couple of videos about this topic already, which you should definitely check out if you haven't yet. This is more to say that instead of a larger social commentary focus that San Andreas and Grand Theft Auto 4 had, GTA 5 is more of a summer blockbuster story with the goal of being entertaining above all else. It's like comparing Oppenheimer to Avengers, or for my music fans, Rage Against the Machine to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Both definitely have some things to say, but you know one clearly has a bit stronger of a message than the other. I'll hand this back over to Will now. Will, thanks again for the opportunity for me to be a guest on this channel. I really appreciate it.
You know, Jeb, you bring up some really good points. I gotta say, when I watched this clip he sent me for the first time, I think I genuinely agreed with every point that he was making. But I do think that there is some more nuance to why GTA 5 feels the way that it does. Jeb mentions that Trevor and Franklin don't really have the most fleshed out relationship by the end of the game, and while I do agree with the point that he's making, I think that's because of an entirely different problem that all of GTA 5 has. You see, the story is trying its best to be as linear as possible. The player transitions from Franklin to Michael to Trevor pretty seamlessly at the beginning, but once all three of the characters are in the mix, the story struggles to accommodate for the amount of context that is required to make it make sense. I don't think it's an unpopular opinion to say that some of the middle third of the story is the most forgettable, and I think that's because Rockstar was still struggling to fully integrate the three characters into the campaign. And the side characters each of them brings into the story feel more like afterthoughts than meaningful inclusions. Towards the end of the game, I'd say that this problem is pretty minimal, but in the middle you definitely see some clumsy story writing as the game tries to make missions that involve all three of the main characters. This definitely isn't the worst flaw to have, and it's pretty understandable, especially when Rockstar have never done something like this before, at least to my knowledge. GTA San Andreas and 4 were complex games in their own right, but I think it's a lot easier to craft a story around one main character that people are beholden to, rather than having three pillars that the foundation of the game is built on. I don't think that a lot of companies can pull off anything near the level of GTA 5 with this premise, but I would be remiss if I didn't at least bring up the flaws that come up with having a main story with multiple playable protagonists. There are a lot of areas that I wish GTA 5 had gone more into detail about. For example, Michael's kids. Sure, we get that one mission where Michael destroys Jimmy's TV and goes for a bike ride, but it felt like the kid missions were more of a checklist item to add to the game than something that belonged in the story itself. From my memory, each of the two kids get 2 missions that hold any relevance. Jimmy gets the boat and the biking, while Tracy gets the yacht and the fame or shame show. And 2 of those missions take place in the same mission, just different parts of it. This is something that's really important to Michael, yet besides his son drugging him and his family leaving for a little while, they're never really mentioned towards the beginning or middle of the game. By the way, this is the family that Michael faked his death for, and while they are meant to be dysfunctional, they feel more underbaked than anything else. Damn it, I said I was going to focus on the positives in this video, and here I am. Oh well. None of you probably believe me anyways. Moving on to some of the elements of Franklin's story that needed more time in the oven, like Jeb said, Trevor and Franklin's relationship is just non-existent. I think this stems from there not being any real conflict between these two pretty much in the entire game. I mean, why would I as a player ever want to decide to kill Trevor at the end of the game when given the choice? He has done nothing to me up until this point, and his only noticeable appearances in the campaign with Franklin are when he's there helping Franklin rob millions of dollars. Fun fact, the first time I played GTA 5, I chose to kill Michael because I thought that option C, Death Wish, meant that Franklin dies. While I think that I did enjoy Michael's story the most in the game, my first time in Franklin's shoes, I chose what I thought made the most sense for Franklin since I didn't know which way to go. I didn't see why Franklin would want to kill Trevor, and he definitely wouldn't want to kill himself for either of these egotistical motherfuckers. And while Michael was his mentor, I thought this option made the most sense because Michael is the reason why Franklin is mixed up in this shit show to begin with. Looking back, I don't really agree with the logic that I had when going into it, and that isn't even what Death Wish was meant to be to begin with, but you have to remember that I was a mere child, so I am just surprised that I was able to string 2 thoughts together, to be honest. Everything else I would have to say about this topic or similar ones was pretty much covered more elegantly and succinctly by Jeb, so I'll leave it there. GTA 5 was trying to be a blockbuster film that didn't worry so much about the nuance and the semantics. While this gave birth to a fantastic story, it also gave way to some flaws in its writing and some nitpicky nerd making fun of it all. Overall, I would say that it's not the best GTA story that we've ever gotten, but it definitely is the most engaging and active one we've ever had. You can tell that this campaign's main focus wasn't really the story beats, it was more focused on providing a playground for the player to explore in multiple ways. However, that does bring me on to a really weird point that I feel whenever I open up GTA 5. I feel like in other GTA games, the story isn't really the main reason why I would always boot it up, yet I don't feel that way when I open GTA 5. I feel like the story has a lot more emphasis when opening it up, and I almost feel like I'm not doing something right if I'm not playing some of the missions. This could be because the single player does nudge you in that direction with periodic phone calls or large waypoints that are quite abundant on the map, but I think that the real reason why the single player feels the way that it does is because of the real sandbox mode that can be found on the disc. If you've played GTA, then you know that I'm referring to GTA Online. GTA Online is such a behemoth at this point, it easily warrants its own video. And honestly, maybe I'll revisit that idea in the future, but for now I think we should discuss why this mode took away some of that shine from the single player. GTA Online started off as a barren wasteland with not a lot to do when players first had access to it all the way back in 2013. Nowadays, you have businesses and heists galore, but before all that we had Madrazo contact missions and killing your friends with supercars you probably spent real money to get. For that reason, I think that Online was used more as the sandbox for the game since you could do anything you can do in the single player, but now with your friends, or random strangers whose day you want to make infinitely worse by just fucking with them on repeat. Then, as GTA became more of the millionaire mogul simulator it is today, players started to create a 3-way shift in how the game was seen. With so many businesses and heists to do, GTA Online with friends and associates became the main thing, and thus is kind of seen as the story of GTA Online, or the main progression system. I mean, nowadays we're getting whole ass storylines added to the game. With the Doomsday Heist, the Bunker series, the Cluckenbell Raid, and so much more, it's not unfair to say that this is what most players do when they open up GTA 5 nowadays. I know it is when I open it. Then you have the sandbox element of it when playing with friends and not worrying about the businesses or other missions or the amount of money you have. Rather than focusing on getting money and upgrading your assets, you do races and death matches with your friends or just blow each other over and over again until one of you rage quits in frustration. These 2 ways of playing online fulfill everything that we used to get from GTA 4 story mode, or San Andreas. Therefore, when you open GTA 5 single player, it isn't uncommon for someone to assume that you're replaying the story or doing a specific mission that you really enjoyed. That's why in the community it isn't really referred to as the single player mode anymore. I only really hear it called the story mode because that's what most people get from it when they open it up. Because for everything else, you have the online mode. This isn't necessarily a critique of the game, just a natural side effect of the amount of attention that Rockstar has been pouring into GTA Online for the last 11 years. I remember spending just hours running around as Nico in GTA 4 going bowling, and only really played the online mode when I wanted to hang out with some friends some of the time. Nowadays, I don't see why I would hang out by myself in the story mode in GTA 5 when I can do the same thing in GTA Online and accrue money for my businesses while I'm at it, or interact with other players in the same lobby. The story mode isn't worse than the online by any means, but I think that the natural progression of almost every player in GTA 5 is to go from one and then to the other. So is GTA 5 the worst game that I have ever played and wish that I could remove the thousands of hours of memories that I have from when I played it? Of course not. But you already know that. I'm still actively playing GTA 5 and GTA Online right now, and I'm having an absolute wonderful time. GTA 5 is one of the best games that has ever been released. That isn't an opinion. This is not me giving you my opinion. It is a titan in the field because of how good and recognizable it is. I mean, just for a second, if you disagree, look at the amount of views that GTA 6 got when its trailer dropped in just one day. You think that many people are hyped for the next installment in a series because this one was mid? But it isn't perfect. The story could use some help, and the game itself feels like it's being overshadowed by its online mode. At least that's what it feels like when you compare how much attention the story mode got versus how much attention the online mode is getting. I do think that there is a very real world where the story mode is seen in even higher regard if the online mode had never come out. But don't take from this that the game isn't good. I only criticize or even talk about it because I think it's worth discussion to begin with. And I genuinely believe that Rockstar is such a good company that they will listen to the community and only improve on these remarks for GTA 6. Which I can't wait for. It comes out while I'm in the middle of law school and I only tremble in fear thinking of the terrible grades I will get that semester. If you're interested in its placement in the tier list, it's not even close. GTA 5 skyrockets to the top, no question. You know what? We're gonna make a new tier called Iconic and just place it there for the time being. These are legacy games that I know going into it are already amazing. Because I love Brotato, but this fight isn't even close. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe, share it around to a few friends, comment down below what you thought of my opinion of the game and the online mode, and tell me in the comments as well if you want to see any other games being discussed. Currently, I'm in the works to try to make a video on the Fallout series, so if you're excited for that, please just let me know. Also, make sure to turn on that bell so that you can get notifications from when I upload, and remember to check out ItsGheb. He did a fantastic job when working with me on this video, and the guy is such a professional, so I would really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart if after you're done subscribing, liking, and hitting that notification on this video, if you went over there to his most recent video, liked, comment, subscribed, did the whole works, and let him know where you came from. But other than that, I've got nothing else. I'll see you guys later.